The silence in deep space shattered as Admiral Cross watched his scanners light up with impossible readings. His fleet of 47 warships had been patrolling the outer rim for 6 months without incident. That peaceful routine ended when the distress signal came through from mining station Theta 9, Raiders. The brigand collective again. 15 ships surrounding the station like predators circling wounded prey. Cross ordered his fleet forward, confident in their numbers and firepower. The Dominion military had protected these sectors for 300 years. A handful of pirates posed no real threat. Then something else appeared on the scanners. Lieutenant Farron stared at his display screen, his 3 eyes blinking in confusion. The readings made no sense. Something massive was emerging from subspace, but the energy signature matched nothing in their database. The ship that materialized before them defied every classification Cross had ever learned. It was enormous. 3 times the length of their largest dreadnought, with a hull that seemed to blend organic curves with sharp geometric angles. The surface looked scarred, marked by countless battles, but those marks glowed faintly with inner light. No visible weapons, no shield proyectos, just that massive, intimidating presence. The identification transponder finally registered. HMES Relentless, Terran Defense Fleet. Cross felt his blood chill. Humans, the newcomers from that brutal death world they called Earth. The Dominion had made first contact with them 12 years ago. Their diplomats seemed reasonable, almost fragile compared to other species. Intelligence reports suggested their technology lagged decades behind galactic standards. Their military consisted of converted cargo haulers and outdated weapons systems. This ship contradicted every single report. Farron's voice cracked as he read the sensor data. The mass readings suggested the hull should collapse under its own gravity. Energy signatures registered off every known scale, yet somehow remained contained within the ship's structure. The propulsion system used principles their scientists couldn't identify. The communications officer received an automated message. Stand clear. Hostile engagement in progress. Cross ordered his fleet to maintain a safe distance. He'd heard stories about humans and their violent homeworld, gravity that would crush most species, weather systems that could destroy cities, predators that hunted in packs. Humans evolved in that nightmare and somehow thrived, but building warships? That took resources and knowledge humans supposedly lacked. The Raider leader noticed the new arrival. His broadcast came through on open channels, full of mockery and threats. 1 ship against 15? The humans must be fools. His vessels opened fire, plasma bolts and kinetic rounds streaking across space toward the Relentless. Cross expected shields to flare. He expected evasive maneuvers. He expected some response that made tactical sense. The human ship did nothing. The weapon struck the hull and simply dissipated. Energy scattered like raindrops hitting stone. Kinetic rounds bounced away as if the hull were made of something impossibly dense. Not a single scratch marred that scarred surface. Then the human ship responded, but it didn't fire weapons. Sections of the hull began to glow brighter. Those marks that Cross thought were battle scars pulsed with light. Then the hull itself started opening, panels sliding back in perfect mechanical precision. Beneath the armor lay thousands upon thousands of launch tubes. Farron gasped. His scanners counted the openings. 500, 1,000, 2,000. The numbers kept climbing. Small craft started emerging from the Relentless. Not fighters in any traditional sense. Each one roughly the size of a personal transport, sleek and deadly looking. They moved with perfect coordination, their flight patterns impossibly precise. Like watching a school of fish moving as one organism. The scanners counted 50 craft, then 100, then 500. They kept coming, an endless stream of small vessels pouring from that massive ship. Cross ordered tactical analysis. Farron's hands shook as he read the results. Each small craft carried enough firepower to cripple a corvette. They moved too fast for organic pilots to control. Yet the analysis showed no advanced AI signatures. Something else guided them. The Raiders saw the swarm approaching and panicked. Their tight formation broke apart as each ship tried to escape individually. Fatal mistake. The small craft didn't swarm randomly. They formed geometric patterns in three-dimensional space, moving with mathematical precision. The patterns shifted and flowed like living things, adapting to every raider movement. Before it happened, Point 3 craft cornered one raider frigate. The first disabled its engines with surgical precision, hitting the exact point where power conduits connected to the drive system. The second stripped away weapons, each shot placed perfectly to destroy targeting systems without breaching the hull. The third deployed some kind of boarding device that latched onto the raider's airlock. This pattern repeated across the battlefield. 15 raider ships faced hundreds of these craft, and the battle became a systematic dismantling rather than a fight. Point 8 raiders tried to jump to hyperspace. Their engines charged, space beginning to fold around them. Then the small craft released some kind of field, and space itself seemed to freeze. The raiders' jump drive screamed in protest, but couldn't punch through whatever held them. Cross realized he was watching a hunt. Not a battle. A hunt. His communications officer looked terrified. Should they hail the human ship? Offer assistance? Cross nodded. Though he suspected the humans needed no help whatsoever, a voice responded. Calm, professional, almost bored. Captain Reeves of the Terran Defense Fleet. He apologized for the display, but noted the raiders had fired first. His tone suggested this was routine, something he dealt with regularly. Cross found his voice and asked about the small craft. What were they? Sentinels, Reeves called them. Automated defense systems. Standard equipment on human warships. The word standard echoed in Cross's mind. This was standard. The last raider ship surrendered. The Sentinels, as Reeves called them, began returning to the Relentless. They flew back in the same perfect formation, disappearing into those launch tubes. The hull closed seamlessly, leaving no trace of the thousands of openings that had existed moments before. Cross had to know. He asked the question that burned in his mind. How many Sentinels did a human warship carry? Long pause on the other end. Then Reeves answered. The Relentless carries about 12,000. She's a light cruiser, so not many compared to our larger vessels. 12,000 at light cruiser. The Dominion's largest carrier held 40 fighters. Their greatest dreadnought carried maybe 200 support craft. This light cruiser held 12,000. Cross looked at the scarred hull of the Relentless with new understanding. Those marks weren't from taking damage. They were from containing something powerful enough to reshape space itself. The humans had built something that shouldn't exist according to every military doctrine he'd ever studied, and they called it a light cruiser. What kind of species builds ships like this? Farron whispered. Cross didn't have an answer. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. Every intelligence report about human military capability was catastrophically wrong. And the galaxy had no idea what had just joined their community of species. The mining station sent grateful messages. The raiders sat captured in disabled ships. And that monster of a human warship hung in space like a sleeping predator, waiting for the next threat to emerge. Admiral Cross received orders from Dominion High Command within the hour. The message was brief and direct. Approach the human vessel. Establish diplomatic contact. Assess capabilities and intentions. Report everything. He looked at his fleet of 47 warships, then at that single human cruiser. The tactical display showed both forces clearly. On paper, his fleet outmassed the Relentants 5-1. In reality, after watching those 12,000 Sentinels in action, Cross suspected one human ship could fight his entire fleet and win. The approach took 30 minutes at cautious speed. Lieutenant Farron kept scanning the human ship, trying to understand its construction. The readings remained impossible. The hull material registered as metallic, but with properties that shouldn't exist. Dense enough to shrug off weapons fire, yet somehow light enough that the ship could maneuver like a fighter craft. Holographic communication established successfully. Captain Reeves appeared in the command center, and Cross studied the human carefully. Middle-aged by human standards, with gray hair at his temples and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners. He wore a simple uniform with minimal decoration. Nothing about his appearance suggested he commanded such devastating power. Reeves thanked Cross for responding to the distress call, apologized for getting in the way, offered to coordinate with Dominion forces for cleanup operations. His manner was friendly, professional, almost deferential. The cognitive dissonance made Cross's head hurt. He chose his words carefully. Asked about human military doctrine. How did humanity approach warfare in space? What principles guided their ship design? Reeves leaned back in his chair, considering the question. Then he smiled, but the expression held sadness. Humans learned warfare on a planet that tried to kill us every day, Admiral. Earth has gravity strong enough to crush most species. Weather systems that spawn storms lasting months. Predators that hunt in coordinated packs. We evolve using tools and tactics, an overwhelming force to survive. When we reached space, we brought those lessons with us. Cross nodded slowly. That matched what little they knew about Earth. But it didn't explain ships like the Relentless. Reeves seemed to read his thoughts. Let me share something about human philosophy, Admiral. We don't fight to win battles. We fight so battles never happen again. Those sentinels you saw, they're not meant to destroy enemies. They're meant to terrify them, to make the cost of fighting humans so high that no one considers it an option. Overwhelming deterrence, Farron muttered from his station. Exactly, Reeves said, hearing him. If every potential aggressor knows that attacking humans means facing thousands of sentinels, most won't attack. The few who do learn very quickly, like those raiders. While Cross spoke with Reeves, Farron continued analyzing the battle footage. The sentinels had moved with precision that suggested quantum computing power. Reaction times measured in microseconds. Coordination that implied a central AI managing thousands of units simultaneously. But the scan showed no AI signatures. No electronic communication between sentinels. No command and control network that sensors could detect. Farron ran the analysis 3 times, checking for errors. The results remained consistent and impossible. Then he noticed something in the energy readings. Faint neural patterns. Biological signatures inside each sentinel. His hands froze on the controls. He ran a deeper scan, not believing what he was seeing. The results came back, and he nearly dropped his datapad. Admiral, he said quietly, those sentinels aren't automated. Cross turned from his conversation with Reeves. What? Each one has a human pilot inside. The neural patterns are unmistakable. They're controlling the sentinels through some kind of direct interface. Silence filled the command center. Cross did the math in his head. 12,000 sentinels. What about those humans? Inside that ship, he looked at Reeves, who was watching him with that same patient expression. You have 12,000 people on that ship? Active combat personnel? Yes, Reeves confirmed. Plus support staff. Engineering. Medical. Command. The Relentless carries about 15,000 total crew. The largest Dominion warship held 4,000 crew and was considered overcrowded. This human light cruiser held nearly 4 times that number. The neural interface, Cross said slowly. The pilots control the sentinels directly? Reeves nodded. It's the only way to achieve the coordination necessary. AI can't match human intuition and creativity. Individual pilots can't coordinate on the scale we need. So we develop technology that links human minds to machines. During combat, our pilots share consciousness. They move as one because they think as one that's impossible, Farron whispered. The neural load would kill them, that it's difficult, Reeves admitted. The training takes years. Many candidates wash out. Those who succeed undergo modifications to their neural structure. It's not without cost. But it works. Cross thought about what he'd witnessed. Those sentinels moving in perfect formation, adapting to threats instantly, fighting with coordination that seemed almost telepathic. Because it was telepathic, 12,000 humans sharing one mind during combat. Why? Cross asked. Why go to such extremes? Reeves's expression darkened. His kind eyes went cold. Let me tell you about humanity's first encounter with galactic civilization, Admiral. We sent out peaceful exploration vessels, made contact with traders, established diplomatic relations. Everything seemed wonderful. Then we met the harvesters that he paused, and Cross saw old rage in that pause. They were slavers. saw humans as primitive because our technology lagged behind galactic standards. They attacked one of our colony ships. 15,000 civilians on board. Families. Children. The harvesters didn't care. By the time the Terran Defense Fleet responded, 8,000 humans were dead. The command center remained silent. Every member of Cross's crew listened to the human captain's words that we built ships like the Relentless with a single purpose, Reeves continued, so that no one ever underestimates us again, so that predators see us coming and run, so that the weak see us and know they're protected. We paid for our lessons in blood, Admiral. We won't pay that price again. Cross understood now. The overwhelming firepower wasn't aggression. It was trauma. Humanity had been hurt, and they'd responded by building weapons that ensured it would never happen again. Before he could respond, alarms screamed across his ship. Farron's voice cracked with shock. Admiral, multiple contacts emerging from subspace. The tactical display filled with new signatures. Cross's heart sank as he counted them. 16 more ships, each matching the Relentless configuration, 0.17 human warships total. Over 200,000 sentinels. And according to Captain Reeves, this was just a patrol group. The rest of our fleet heard about the raiders, Reeves explained calmly. They wanted to help. Help, Cross thought numbly. 17 warships capable of reshaping the balance of power in this entire sector appeared because of pirates. Admiral Hendricks commanded the fleet. Her face appeared on the communication screen, older and harder than Reeves. She thanked Cross politely for his fleet's presence, then took command of the situation with calm authority. Cross technically held seniority in this sector. His fleet outnumbered the humans. By every protocol, he should be in charge, but he said nothing. Didn't protest. Didn't challenge her authority. Because challenging 17 ships that could each fight his entire fleet would be suicide. The human vessels formed a protective perimeter around the mining station. Medical teams deployed to the colony surface. Engineers assessed damage. Security forces established defenses. Within 2 hours, the situation was completely under control. Cross watched it all happen with growing understanding. Humanity's strength didn't come from their technology. It came from their willingness to do whatever was necessary to protect others. They'd survived a planet that tried to kill them. Now they'd become the galaxy's apex predator, and they used that power to guard the weak. Lieutenant Farron compiled his report over the next 3 days while the human fleet maintained position around Mining Station Theta 9. Every piece of data he gathered made the picture more troubling. Humanity had joined galactic civilization only 12 years ago. In that short time, they'd built a military force that could challenge major powers. The numbers were staggering. The Terran Defense Fleet consisted of over 300 warships spread across human territory. Each ship carried thousands of crew. Each crew member underwent years of training. The neural interface technology alone represented advances that most species hadn't achieved in centuries. Yet humans remained diplomatic. Friendly even. They traded fairly, respected borders, participated in galactic councils. Nothing about their civilian behavior suggested the military might they possessed. Admiral Cross requested a private meeting with Admiral Hendricks. She agreed, and her hologram appeared in his ready room that evening. Up close, she looked even more weathered. Scars marked her face and hands. Her eyes held the weight of someone who'd seen too much death. Why such overwhelming force? Cross asked directly. Your ships could fight entire fleets. Why build weapons so far beyond what any threat requires? Hendricks studied him for a long moment. Then she began speaking about human history. Earth was never kind to us, Admiral. We spent thousands of years fighting each other for survival. Wars that killed millions. Weapons that could destroy entire cities in seconds. We came close to extinction multiple times. Each time, we learned the same lesson. Prepare for the worst possible scenario. Then prepare for something even worse. She pulled up holographic images. Human cities reduced to rubble. Wastelands where nothing grew. Memorial walls with millions of names. When we reached space, we expected peace. Hope for it. Then we met the harvesters. They taught us that the galaxy has predators just like Earth did. So we prepared. We built ships that could face any threat. We trained warriors willing to die, protecting others. We created the Terran Defense Fleet not because we love war, Admiral. We created it because we hate war so much that we'll do anything to prevent it. Cross thought about his own species. The Dominion had known peace for generations. Their military existed mainly for show. Pirates posed the only real threat, and even they usually ran rather than fought. Humanity had no such luxury. They'd learned that safety was an illusion. Hendricks shared more details about Sentinel technology. The neural interface went beyond simple control systems. Pilots and their Sentinels bonded at a fundamental level. During combat, 12,000 minds merged into something greater than the sum of its parts. They thought together, moved together, fought together. The cost was enormous. Many pilots retired with permanent neurological damage. Some lost the ability to function independently after years of shared consciousness. The human mind wasn't designed to merge with others so completely, but they volunteered anyway. Thousands of humans lined up for the chance to protect others, knowing it might destroy them. Why? Cross asked. Why sacrifice so much? Because someone has to, Hendricks said simply. Because the alternative is watching innocent people die while we do nothing. Because every human remembers those 8,000 civilians the harvesters killed. We remember, and we make sure it never happens again. Over the following days, human security forces interrogated the captured raiders. Their methods were sophisticated and non-lethal, but ruthlessly effective. Within 48 hours, they had complete intelligence on the brigand collective. Base locations, supply routes, leadership structure, financial networks, everything. Cross watched them work and realized humans approached even pirate elimination like a military campaign. Thorough, systematic, overwhelming. Then, the classified message arrived from Dominion High Command. Eyes only. Maximum encryption. Cross read it in his private quarters, and his hands began shaking. Dominion intelligence had discovered something. Deep space monitoring stations detected anomalies matching classified human reports. Reports that humanity had never shared with galactic civilization. Reports about something that existed in the void between stars. The message included fragments of recovered data. 23 years ago, before humans achieved faster-than-light travel, a generation ship encountered something. The records were fragmented and corrupted, but the terror was clear. Something breached their hull without breaking the seal. Killed half the crew before they drove it away, using nuclear weapons detonated inside their own ship. Survivors called it the Dark. Cross read through more intelligence files. Dominion sensors had detected 3 separate incidents in deep space over the past decade. Strange energy signatures, reality distortions, ships that went silent and were found later torn apart from inside. The Dominion had classified these incidents, unsure what caused them. Now they knew. Humanity had encountered these things, fought them, survived, and built their entire military to fight them again. Cross's understanding shifted completely. The relentless and ships like her weren't designed to fight raiders or conventional fleets. They were designed to fight entities that defied physics, enemies that existed in multiple dimensions, threats that conventional weapons couldn't touch. The overwhelming firepower made sense now. The Sentinel swarms, the neural interface allowing human intuition to guide weapons, the willingness to sacrifice everything. Humans were preparing for a war the rest of the galaxy didn't know existed. He confronted Admiral Hendricks with this knowledge. She fell silent for a long moment when he explained what Dominion intelligence had discovered. Then she nodded slowly. "How did you find out?" she asked. "Deep space monitoring," Cross said. "We've been detecting anomalies. Your classified reports match our data perfectly." Hendricks sighed deeply. "Then I suppose you deserve the full truth." She told him everything. The generation ship encounter, the research that followed, the 3 subsequent battles with entities humanity called Voidborn. Different creatures each time, but sharing common traits. They existed partially outside normal space. Conventional weapons passed through them. They killed by touch, their very presence warping reality. Humanity had fought these things 3 times and barely won each battle. So they built ships specifically designed to fight enemies that shouldn't exist. Weapons that fired across multiple dimensions. Swarms that could adapt to targets phased through normal space. Neural interfaces that allowed human creativity to overcome the limitations of programmed AI. The entire Terran defense fleet existed for one purpose: to be ready when the Voidborn returned. Does anyone else know? Cross asked. Just humans, Hendrik said. And now you. We haven't told the galactic community because the truth would cause panic. Economic collapse. Political chaos. Better to let everyone think we're paranoid deathworlders than admit the galaxy has predators worse than anyone imagined. Cross considered the implications. If humanity was right, galactic civilization was unprepared for a threat it didn't know existed. If humanity was wrong, they'd militarized based on paranoia. But he'd watched the relentless fight. That wasn't paranoia. That was experience. Will they come back? He asked that Hendrix's expression went dark. They always come back. That's why we're here. That's why we build these ships. That's why 12,000 humans volunteer to merge their minds and sacrifice their sanity. Because when the Voidborn return, someone needs to stand between them and everyone else. The conversation ended there. Cross returned to his duties with a heavy heart. He filed his report with Dominion High Command, recommending immediate military cooperation with humanity, sharing defense protocols, coordinating sensor networks, preparing for threats that most species didn't believe existed. 3 days later, every sensor on every ship screamed simultaneously. Space itself began tearing open like fabric being ripped apart. Not a standard jump point. Something else. Something wrong. Admiral Hendrix's face went white as she saw the readings. Her voice cut through all communication channels with 2 words that made Cross's blood freeze. That it's here. Reality fractured like glass struck by a hammer. Space itself screamed as something pushed through from dimensions that shouldn't exist. The thing that emerged defied every attempt to describe it. Tentacles that were also wings that were also something else entirely. It existed in multiple places simultaneously, occupying spaces that contradicted each other. Admiral Cross's sensors couldn't track it properly. The displays showed overlapping images, conflicting data, readings that made no physical sense. One moment, the entity measured 50 meters across. The next moment, it was 500. Then, both at once, his crew panicked. 3 officers fled their stations. Another vomited at the sight on the view screen. Lieutenant Farron stared at his console with wide eyes, unable to process what the sensors reported. The human fleet responded instantly. No hositación. No confusión. They'd trained for this. Admiral Hendrix's voice cut through every communication channel. Dominion vessels, retreat to minimum safe distance immediately. Terran Defense Fleet, Formation Omega. Authorization code Darkfall 77. Cross started to protest. His fleet could help. His ships carried powerful weapons. But Hendrix cut him off. Admiral, your weapons cannot hurt it. Ours can. Please, get your people to safety. We'll handle this. Her tone allowed no argument. Cross gave the order, and his fleet pulled back. He watched from 10,000 kilometers away as the human ships moved into position. The 17 warships formed a perfect sphere around the entity, each vessel positioned with mathematical precision, surrounding the creature completely. Then the transformation began. Every ship opened simultaneously. Thousands of panels slid back across 17 hulls. The launch tubes Cross had seen before multiplied across his vision. Not hundreds, not thousands, tens of thousands. Over 200,000 sentinels deployed in less than 60 seconds. They poured from the human ships like water from a broken dam, filling space with small, deadly craft. The swarm formed geometric patterns in 3 dimensions, shapes that hurt to look at because they extended into spaces the eye couldn't properly perceive. Lieutenant Farron realized something that made his voice shake. Admiral, those patterns, they're not just 3-dimensional. The Sentinels are forming structures in spaces our sensors can't measure. They're fighting in dimensions we can't see. The entity lashed out. One sweep of its impossible limbs, and 17 Sentinels simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not damaged. They were there, and then they weren't. Erased from reality. But 17 more immediately filled the gaps. The pattern never broke. The swarm adapted and flowed like a living thing, tightening around the entity. Weapons fire streaked across space in colors that shouldn't exist. Energy that made reality scream and warp. The Sentinels fired in perfect coordination, thousands of weapons targeting points in space that seemed empty but clearly weren't. Inside the Relentless, Captain Reeves stood in the command center with his eyes closed. Neural interface active, connected to all 12,000 pilots. He felt their fear, their determination, their pain as Sentinels died. 3 pilots died in the first 30 seconds, their consciousness snuffed out as their Sentinels were erased. He felt them die through the neural link that he kept fighting. They all kept fighting. This was what they'd trained for. Why they'd volunteered. Why they'd sacrificed their sanity to merge minds with machines and each other. The entity didn't fight like anything biological or technological. It phased through attacks, reformed when damaged, seemed to learn and adapt with each passing second. Sentinel fire that worked one moment passed harmlessly through it the next. But the humans had anticipated this. Their weapons changed frequency constantly. Different energy types, different dimensional alignments, never giving the entity time to adapt completely. The battle raged for 7 minutes that felt like hours. Cross watched helplessly as Sentinel after Sentinel died. The swarm kept tightening, kept adapting, kept fighting with coordination that was beautiful and terrible. Lieutenant Farron studied the battle frantically, trying to find some way his fleet could help. Then he noticed something. The entity, while phased through most of normal space, still responded to gravitational fields. Its movements bent slightly near the human ships. Farron ran calculations quickly. Dominion ships used powerful gravitational generators for artificial gravity. What if they amplified those generators to maximum and used them as weapons? He brought the idea to Admiral Cross. It was desperate. It might not work, but doing nothing while humans died felt wrong. Cross ordered it immediately. His entire fleet activated gravitational field generators at maximum power. They created eddies and currents in space itself, invisible tides of warped space-time. The effect was subtle but crucial. The entity's phasing ability disrupted for microseconds at a time. Not enough to trap it, but enough to hold it in normal space slightly longer. Long enough for human weapons to strike true. Admiral Hendricks saw the opportunity immediately. Her tactical display showed the gravitational disruption, saw how it affected the entity. Her voice cracked across the fleet channels. All ships, final protocol authorized. May we see each other again in calmer seas. The 17 human warships stopped maintaining formation. They dove directly at the entity, engines at maximum. The Sentinels created a corridor through the center of their swarm, giving the massive ships a clear path. Cross realized what was happening with horror. The ships themselves were becoming weapons. Every human warship opened completely. Not just the launch tubes. Everything. The entire hull peeled back like a flower blooming. Every weapon fired simultaneously. Energy signatures spiked so high that Cross's sensors simply shut down rather than try to process the data. Sentinels flew directly into the entity, carrying weapons that detonated on contact. Explosions in multiple dimensions. Reality itself tore and reformed. The entity shrieked, a sound that wasn't sound but somehow still caused pain. The light became blinding. Cross's crew shielded their eyes. Sensors died. Communications went dead. For 10 seconds, nothing existed but light and screaming reality. Then silence. When the sensors came back online, the entity was gone. Simply vanished. But 4 of the 17 human warships had vanished with it. The Relentless remained, scarred and damaged. 13 other human vessels limped in space, their hulls torn open, power flickering. Point 4 ships lost. 48,000 humans dead. 20,000 more Sentinels destroyed in the battle. The Dominion fleet remained completely untouched. Humans had protected them at terrible cost. Admiral Cross contacted Admiral Hendricks immediately. Her face appeared on screen, showing exhaustion and grief that aged her 20 years. He tried to thank her, tried to find words for what her fleet had done. She cut him off gently. "You helped, Admiral. Those gravitational fields made the difference. We couldn't have one without the Dominion's assistance." They both knew she was being generous. The humans had done the real fighting, paid the real price. Cross finally understood what human warships really were. Not weapons of conquest, not tools of aggression. They were shields, guardians standing between the galaxy and horrors most species couldn't imagine. That monster of a ship, the Relentless? It wasn't a monster at all. The IT was the only thing standing between civilization and the dark. The aftermath of battle filled space with debris and grief. Human recovery teams worked through the wreckage, searching for survivors. They found none. When a sentinel was erased by the Voidborn, its pilot died instantly. When a ship was pulled into whatever dimension the entity came from, everyone aboard simply ceased to exist. 48,000 names to add to memorial walls. 48,000 families to notify. 48,000 holes in the Terran Defense Fleet. Admiral Cross ordered his medical teams to assist the damaged human vessels. Dominion engineers helped repair hull breaches. Supply ships transferred power cells and materials. It felt inadequate after watching humans die to protect his fleet, but it was something. Lieutenant Farron coordinated the relief efforts from his station. He noticed something strange in the human crew behavior. Despite losing 4 ships and tens of thousands of crew, there was no panic. No chaos. The remaining 13 ships maintained formation, continued scanning for threats, kept their weapons ready. They expected more attacks. Captain Reeves emerged from the Relentless Command Center after 18 hours of continuous duty. His face looked hollow. The neural interface left visible marks on his temples where the connection had been most intense. He felt 3,000 of his pilots die through that connection. Felt their consciousness wink out one by one. Cross spoke with him briefly. Asked if he needed medical attention. Reeves shook his head. "This is what we signed up for, Admiral. Every pilot knows the cost. We pay it willingly." "But 48,000 people," Cross said. "How do you keep going after losing so many?" "Because 48,000 dead is better than 4 million, Reeves replied. "That mining station held 4,000 colonists. Your fleet has 47 ships with roughly 85,000 crew total. If we hadn't been here, if we hadn't built these ships and trained these pilots, everyone would be dead. So yes, we lost 48,000, but we saved almost 90,000. That's why we keep going. The mathematics of sacrifice. Cold, brutal, necessary." Over the next week, more human ships arrived. Not warships this time. Hospital ships. Engineering vessels. A massive carrier designed to transport sentinels for the damaged warships. The Terran Defense Fleet mobilized its full support structure to help the survivors. Admiral Hendricks held a memorial service on the 3rd day. She invited representatives from the Dominion Fleet to attend. Cross came personally, along with 20 officers from his command staff. The service took place in space, broadcast across all ships. Hendricks stood before holographic displays showing the faces of every human who died. 48,000 faces, young and old, male and female. Every ethnicity humanity possessed. United in death. Her speech was brief. She spoke about duty, about sacrifice, about the promise humanity made when they built the Terran Defense Fleet, to stand between the darkness and everyone else, to pay whatever price necessary to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. Then she said something that made Cross's breath catch, that we didn't ask for this responsibility, didn't want it, but we're the only ones who can bear it. Earth made us hard enough to survive. Experience made us strong enough to fight. And our values make us willing to die so others can live. That's what makes us human. Not our technology, not our warships. Our willingness to sacrifice everything for people we've never met. The faces of the dead faded from view. In their place appeared the faces of those saved. The 4,000 colonists from mining station Theta 9. The 85,000 Dominion crew members, children and families, scientists and workers, all alive because humans stood in the way. Cross understood then. Human strength didn't come from their weapons. It came from their purpose. They'd turned trauma into determination, turned loss into protection. They'd experienced the worst the universe could offer and decided to become shields rather than swords. Lieutenant Farron approached Admiral Cross after the service. He'd been analyzing the battle data obsessively, trying to understand how the humans fought so effectively. His findings were remarkable. The Sentinels weren't just controlled by neural interface, Farron explained. They were extensions of human consciousness. During battle, the pilots didn't think about moving their Sentinels. They thought about the tactical situation, and the Sentinels moved accordingly. Like moving an arm. Instinctive. Immediate. This allowed reaction times faster than any AI. Adaptability beyond any programming. Creativity that no machine could match. But it came at a cost. The neural load was enormous. Pilots burned out their nervous systems through repeated combat. Many became addicted to the shared consciousness, unable to feel complete outside the neural link. The human military consumed its people to protect others, and humans volunteered anyway. Cross filed his final report to Dominion High Command over encrypted channels. He detailed everything: the battle, the casualties, the truth about the Voidborn. His recommendations were stark: immediate military alliance with humanity, technology sharing, coordinated defense protocols, begin training Dominion personnel in anti-Voidborn tactics, upgrade sensor networks to detect dimensional breaches, prepare the galaxy for a threat it didn't know existed. The response came back within days. Dominion High Command approved everything. More than that, they authorized full disclosure to the Galactic Council. The time for secrecy had ended. The Voidborn were real. The threat was immediate. Every species needed to prepare. Admiral Hendricks met with Cross one final time before the human fleet departed. Her fleet was down to 13 ships, battered and damaged, but still operational. They would return to human space for repairs and reinforcement. New ships would be built. New pilots trained. The Terran defense fleet would rebuild stronger. "Thank you," Cross said simply. "For everything." Hendricks smiled tiredly. "Thank your Lieutenant Farron. Those gravitational fields made the difference between victory and losing more ships. You helped save human lives, Admiral. That matters to us." Cross watched the human fleet depart, 13 massive warships limping toward home. He thought about the sacrifice they represented, the cost they paid, the protection they provided. Mining Station Theta 9 sent messages of gratitude for weeks afterward. For 1,000 colonists alive, because humans answered their distress call. Because humans built ships that could fight dimensional horrors. Because humans were willing to die for strangers. Lieutenant Farron asked Cross a question that stayed with him. "Do you think humanity will ever get peace? Will they ever be able to stop building these weapons?" Cross thought about Earth, about a species that evolved on a planet trying to kill them, about humans who learned that safety was earned through strength and sacrifice, about 48,000 people who died protecting others that, he said finally, humanity will never know peace, because they've taken on the burden of protecting everyone else. They've made themselves guardians of the galaxy. And guardians don't get to rest, Farron nodded slowly. Then we need to help them. They shouldn't have to stand alone. Agreed, Cross said. The Dominion fleet maintained position near Mining Station Theta 9 for another month. They upgraded the station's defenses, installed new sensor arrays, trained the colonists in emergency protocols. If the Voidborn returned, people would be ready. But Cross knew the truth. If the Voidborn returned, the Real defense would be human ships appearing from nowhere. Sentinels filling the void. Pilots willing to die, protecting strangers. That's what humanity had become. Not conquerors, not warriors seeking glory, guardians standing watch in the darkness. And the galaxy needed them desperately. 3 months passed before Admiral Cross saw human warships again. The Galactic Council had convened an emergency session after his report. Representatives from 40 species gathered to discuss the Voidborn threat. The meeting lasted 6 days and accomplished nothing. Half the species refused to believe the threat existed, dismissed human warnings as fear-mongering, suggested humanity exaggerated dangers to justify their military buildup. Some accused humans of creating a false threat to gain political power. The other half believed, but couldn't agree on response. Some wanted immediate military mobilization. Others preferred diplomatic solutions. A few suggested hiding and hoping the Voidborn never found them. The council dissolved without reaching consensus. Humanity responded by building more ships. Cross received regular updates from Terran Defense Fleet Command. The 4 destroyed vessels were being replaced by 8 new ones. Each new ship incorporated lessons learned from the battle. Improved weapons, stronger hulls, better dimensional shielding. Humanity was adapting. More importantly, recruitment had surged. The battle footage had been shared across human space. 48,000 deaths could have discouraged volunteers. Instead, applications to join the Sentinel program increased by 400%. Young humans saw the sacrifice and wanted to be part of it. Lieutenant Farron found this baffling. Why would anyone volunteer to have their mind merged with a machine? To risk permanent neurological damage? To die fighting creatures from impossible dimensions? Because it matters, Cross said simply. Humans need purpose. They need to feel their lives mean something. The Sentinel program offers that. A chance to protect others. To be part of something greater than themselves. For humans, that's worth any cost. The Dominion military began implementing human tactics. Not the neural interface technology that was beyond their current capabilities, but the strategic principles. Overwhelming response to any threat. Coordinated swarm tactics. Weapons designed to fight in multiple dimensions. It would take years to fully integrate, but the process had started. Then the distress call came from Relay Station 92, 2 sectors away from Mining Station Theta 9. A different target. Same threat. Cross's fleet was closest. He ordered immediate response, knowing what they'd find. Knowing his ships couldn't fight it effectively. But he went anyway because someone had to. They arrived to find another reality breach. Another void-born entity tearing through space. This one looked different from the first. More angular, covered in what might have been eyes or weapons or something else entirely. It was consuming the relay station, pulling chunks of it into whatever dimension it came from. Cross ordered his fleet into a defensive formation copied from human tactics. 47 ships formed a sphere around the entity. They activated gravitational field generators at maximum, began firing every weapon they possessed. The entity barely noticed. Their weapons passed through it. The gravitational fields slowed it marginally, but couldn't contain it. Cross watched his tactical display with growing desperation. 3,000 people staffed that relay station. He needed help. Then the sensors detected 14 ships emerging from hyperspace. Human vessels. Not the full 17 from last time, but 14 ships with over 160,000 Sentinels ready to deploy. Admiral Hendrix's voice came through, and Cross had never been more grateful to hear another person speak. Dominion fleet, maintain gravitational disruption. We're going to need it. Good work holding the line until we arrived. The human ships dove into formation. The battle that followed was brutal. This Voidborn seemed stronger than the first. More aggressive. It destroyed 40 Sentinels in the opening seconds. Adapted to human weapons faster. Fought with intelligence that suggested learning and strategy. But humanity had learned too. Their weapons fired in sequences designed to prevent adaptation. Sentinels moved in patterns that forced the entity to spread its attention. And the Dominion gravitational fields disrupted its phasing ability just enough to matter. Cross watched humans die again. Felt helpless again. But this time, his fleet contributed meaningfully. The gravitational disruption bought crucial seconds. Dominion weapons, while ineffective against the entity, drew its attention. Created openings for human strikes. The battle lasted 12 minutes. The entity died screaming. 2 human ships were lost. 24,000 humans dead. But Relay Station 92 survived. 3,000 people saved. Admiral Hendricks contacted Cross after the battle. Her face showed the same exhaustion and grief as before, but also something new. Appreciation. Your fleet performed admirably, Admiral. Those gravitational fields and the covering fire from your ships saved human lives. We're grateful for your assistance. 24,000 of your people died protecting mine, Cross said. Gratitude seems insufficient. It's what we do, Hendricks replied. What we've always done. Stand between the darkness and everyone else. But it's easier when we don't stand alone. Thank you for being here. Over the following weeks, a pattern emerged. Void-born attacks increased. Once every few weeks, reality would tear open somewhere in known space. An entity would emerge. Humans would respond. Fight. Win at terrible cost. The Terran Defense Fleet lost 12 ships over 3 months. 144,000 crew. But they save hundreds of thousands of civilians across dozens of species. Relay stations. Mining colonies. Trading outposts. Passenger ships. Humans protected them all. Slowly, the galaxy began to understand. The Galactic Council reconvened. This time, 40 species voted unanimously to coordinate with humanity. Technology sharing, joint training programs, integrated defense networks. The alliance that should have formed immediately began taking shape. Captain Reeves received a promotion to admiral in command of a new ship, the HMS Dauntless, a heavy cruiser carrying 20,000 sentinels. He visited Admiral Cross before his deployment, and they shared drinks in Cross's ready room. Oh, you ever regret it? Cross asked. The neural interface? The sacrifice? Reeves thought for a long moment. Every pilot loses something. Pieces of themselves merge with the machine and never come back. Some of us can barely function as individuals anymore. We're so used to shared consciousness that being alone feels wrong. Is it worth it? He looked out the viewport at his new ship. Yes. Every time. Because I've seen what happens when we're not there. I've felt civilians die through the neural link when we arrive too late. That pain is worse than anything the interface does to us. So yes, I make the same choice every time. Cross raised his glass in salute. To guardians who stand in the dark. Reeves smiled and returned the gesture. To allies who stand beside them. 6 months after the first Void-born attack, Admiral Cross received an unusual request. The Terran Defense Fleet wanted to establish a permanent joint training facility with the Dominion military. Human and alien crews would train together, learn from each other, prepare for threats together. The Dominion approved immediately. Lieutenant Farron volunteered to attend the first training session. Spent 6 months at the human facility learning about neural interfaces, sentinel tactics, and dimensional physics. He came back changed, more confident, more capable, more understanding of what humanity had sacrificed to protect everyone else. The Void-born attacks continued. Once per month on average. Sometimes more frequent. Sometimes less. But they never stopped completely. And humanity never stopped responding. Admiral Cross stood on his command deck 2 years after that first encounter, watching the relentless pass through his sector on patrol. The ship showed new scars from new battles. But it still flew. Still carried 12,000 pilots willing to merge their minds and fight monsters. That he thought about the question he'd asked himself when he first saw that ship. What kind of species builds vessels like this? Now he knew the answer. A species that survived a planet trying to kill them. A species that learned protection was worth any cost. A species that turned trauma into purpose and sacrifice into strength. That a species the galaxy desperately needed. His communications officer interrupted his thoughts. Admiral, incoming distress call from Sector 97. Colony ship under attack. Signs of dimensional breach. Cross felt the familiar cold fear. Then determination. His fleet was ready. His crew trained. They might not be human, but they'd learned from humanity. Learned that standing against the darkness was worth any price. Signal the relentless, he ordered. Request immediate assistance. And take us to maximum speed. People need us. The Dominion fleet jumped to hyperspace. Behind them, the relentless followed. Humans and their allies racing toward another battle. Another sacrifice. Another chance to stand between the darkness and the light. because someone had to, and humanity had taught the galaxy that guardians don't get to rest. They just fight until there's nothing left to fight, or until everyone else is safe. The void waited, filled with monsters that shouldn't exist. But it also held guardians who refused to let those monsters win. That was enough. It had to be.